Добрий день, шановні члени спеціалізованої вченої ради, шановний дисертанте, шановні присутні. Відповідно до пунктів 14-17 порядку присудження ступеня доктора філософії та скасування рішення разової спеціалізованої вченої ради закладу вищої освіти, наукової установи про присудження ступеня доктора філософії, затвердженого постановою Кабінету міністрів України за номером 44 від 12 січня 2022 року, утворено разову спеціалізовану вчену раду у Мелітопольському державному педагогічному університеті імені Богдана Хмельницького від 3.06.2025 року, протокол номер 16, з правом прийняття до розгляду та проведення разового захисту дисертації Рудковського Максима Сергійовича на тему «Організація навчальної діяльності школярів 7-9 класів на уроках англійської мови на основі дитиноцентрованого підходу» на здобуття ступеня доктора філософії з галузі знань 011 освіта педагогіка, спеціальності 011 освітні педагогічні науки. Розпочинаємо нашу роботу. Зараз у нас присутні 5 членів ради з 5. Дозвольте їх представити. Голова ради – я, Глазкова Ірина Яківна, доктор педагогічних наук, професор кафедри германської філології та методики викладання германських мов Мелітопольського державного педагогічного університету імені Богдана Хмельницького. Офіційні опоненти. Шехавцова Світлана Олександрівна, доктор педагогічних наук, професор кафедри романо-германської філології Державного закладу Луганський національний університет імені Тараса Шевченка. Дмитренко Наталя Євгенівна, доктор педагогічних наук, професор кафедри іноземних мов Вінницького державного педагогічного університету імені Михайла Коцюбинського. Офіційні рецензенти. Гончарова Ольга Анатоліївна, кандидат педагогічних наук, доцент кафедри германської філології та методики викладання германських мов Мелітопольського державного педагогічного університету імені Богдана Хмельницького. Маслова Аліна Вікторівна, кандидат педагогічних наук, доцент кафедри германської філології та методики викладання германських мов Мелітопольського державного педагогічного університету імені Богдана Хмельницького. Шановні члени спеціалізованої вченої ради, нам необхідно себе ідентифікувати, назвати прізвище, ім'я по батькові та підтвердити свою присутність голосом. Першою почну я. Я, Глазкова Ірина Яківна, голова разової спеціалізованої вченої ради, присутня. Будь ласка, інші. Спочатку рецензенти, а потім опоненти, прошу.
Гончарова Ольга Анатолівна, член спеціалізованої вченої ради, присутня.
Маслова Аліна Вікторівна, член спеціалізованої вченої ради, присутня.
Я, Шехавцова Світлана Олександрівна, член спеціалізованої вченої ради, офіційний опонент, присутня.
Дмитренко Наталія Євгенівна, член спеціалізованої вченої ради, офіційний опонент, присутня.
Дякую. Шановні члени спеціалізованої вченої ради, відповідно до умов сьогодення, всі члени разової спеціалізованої вченої ради беруть участь у засіданні з використанням засобів відеозв'язку в режимі реального часу за допомогою платформи Zoom. На засіданні присутні всі 5 членів ради, 3 доктори педагогічних наук та 2 кандидати педагогічних наук. Враховуючи повну присутність, кворум є, ми можемо починати засідання. Засідання разової спеціалізованої вченої ради оголошую відкритим. Нагадую, що відповідно до згаданої вище постанови Кабінету міністрів України за номером 44 від 12 січня 2022 року, засідання разової спеціалізованої вченої ради повинно супроводжуватися відеозаписом. На порядку денному одне питання – захист дисертаційної роботи Рудковського Максима Сергійовича на тему «Організація навчальної діяльності школярів 7-9 класів на уроках англійської мови на основі дитиноцентрованого підходу, на здобуття ступеня доктора філософії з галузі знань 01 освіта педагогіка спеціальності 011 освітні педагогічні науки». Тема дисертації була затверджена рішенням вченої ради Мелітопольського державного педагогічного університету імені Богдана Хмельницького, протокол номер 9 від 18 грудня 2019 року та уточнена на засіданні вченої ради Мелітопольського державного педагогічного університету імені Богдана Хмельницького, протокол номер 1 від 26.08.2024 року. Дисертаційна робота виконана у Мелітопольському державному педагогічному університеті імені Богдана Хмельницького. Науковий керівник Коноваленко Тетяна Василівна, кандидат педагогічних наук, доцент кафедри германської філології та методики викладання германських мов Мелітопольського державного педагогічного університету імені Богдана Хмельницького. Шановні колеги, чи є зауваження і пропозиції щодо порядку денного? Якщо немає зауважень і заперечень, прошу членів Ради проголосувати. Хто за те, щоб затвердити такий порядок денний, прошу голосувати. Хто за? Так, добре. Проти? Немає. Утрималися. Дякую. Одноголосно порядок денний затверджено. Шановні колеги, до спеціалізованої вченої ради від аспіранта надійшов повний пакет документів відповідно до чинного законодавства. В особовій справі є також відгуки офіційних опонентів та рецензентів. Таким чином, подані дисертантом до разової спеціалізованої вченої ради документи надійшли в повному обсязі. Дисертаційна робота була перевірена автоматизованим сервісом пошуку програмно-обчислювального комплексу Strike Plagiarism. За результатами перевірки, дисертація визнана оригінальною роботою, яка не містить елементів академічного плагіату. Дозвольте довести до наукової спільноти дані з особової справи здобувача. Рудковський Максим Сергійович народився 5 вересня 1992 року в селі Костянтинівка Мелітопольського району Запорізької області. У 2014 році закінчив Мелітопольський державний педагогічний університет імені Богдана Хмельницького за спеціальністю філологія, мова і література англійська та здобув кваліфікацію бакалавра. У 2016 році закінчив Мелітопольський державний педагогічний університет імені Богдана Хмельницького за спеціальністю педагогіка вищої школи та здобув кваліфікацію магістра. У 2021 році закінчив Мелітопольський державний педагогічний університет імені Богдана Хмельницького за спеціальністю психологія, практична психологія та здобув кваліфікацію магістра. У 2019 році вступив до аспірантури Мелітопольського державного педагогічного університету імені Богдана Хмельницького на освітньо-наукову програму підготовки здобувачів 3-го освітньо-наукового рівня вищої освіти з галузі знань 01 освіта педагогіка, спеціальності 011 освітні педагогічні науки. Освітньо-наукову програму виконав у повному обсязі. Тема дисертації затверджена на засіданні вченої ради Мелітопольського державного педагогічного університету імені Богдана Хмельницького, протокол номер 9 від 18 грудня 2019 року, уточнення на засіданні вченої ради Мелітопольського державного педагогічного університету імені Богдана Хмельницького, протокол номер 1 від 26.08.2024 року. Результати дисертаційної роботи відображено у 20 публікаціях. З них 6 статей у фахових виданнях з педагогічних наук, 11 публікацій у збірниках матеріалів міжнародних науково-практичних конференцій, 3 статті у зарубіжних виданнях, що індексуються у наукометричних базах даних Google Scholar Index Copernicus. 11 лютого 2026 року на засіданні кафедри педагогіки дисертація Рудковського Максима Сергійовича на тему «Організація навчальної діяльності школярів 7-9 класах на уроках англійської мови на основі дитиноцентрованого підходу» була рекомендована до захисту. В особовій справі Рудковського Максима Сергійовича є всі необхідні документи, що подаються до разової спеціалізованої вченої ради. Письмова заява здобувача. Копія першої сторінки паспорта громадянина України. Копія диплома магістра. Витяг з наказу про зарахування до аспірантури. Академічна довідка про виконання освітньо-наукової програми. Висновок наукового керівника. Висновок про наукову новизну, теоретичне та практичне значення результатів дисертації. Дисертація у друкованому та електронному вигляді. Копії наукових публікацій, зарахованих за темою дисертації. Кількість, обсяг та зміст друкованих праць відповідають вимогам МОН України щодо публікацій основного змісту дисертації на здобуття наукового ступеня доктора філософії. Таким чином, подані дисертантом до разової спеціалізованої вченої ради документи надійшли своєчасно та в повному обсязі, а також відповідають встановленим вимогам порядку присудження ступеня доктора філософії та скасування рішення разової спеціалізованої вченої ради закладу вищої освіти, наукової установи про присудження ступеня доктора філософії, затвердженого постановою Кабінетів міністрів України за номером 44 від 12.01.2022 року. До спеціалізованої вченої ради вчасно надійшли відгуки опонентів та рецензії рецензентів, які були вчасно розміщені на сайті Мелітопольського державного педагогічного університету імені Богдана Хмельницького. Дисертація та її оформлення відповідають вимогам наказу Міністерства освіти і науки України за номером 40 від 12 січня 2017 року про затвердження вимог до оформлення дисертації. Дисертація до захисту подається вперше. Тобто, у нас є всі підстави допустити здобувача до захисту. Шановні члени спеціалізованої вченої ради, чи є у вас питання щодо інформації стосовно об'єктивних даних здобувача та документів, поданих до ради? Немає. Дякую. Наразі нам необхідно погодити мову, якою буде здійснюватися захист дисертації. Максиме Сергійовичу, якою мовою ви бажаєте захищатися?
Я би хотів захищатися англійською мовою.
Добре. Дякую. So, the floor is given to the applicant, Maxim Sergeyevich Rudkovsky, to report on the main provisions of the dissertation. You are welcome. The time is up to 20 minutes.
Esteemed heads of the Specialized Academic Council, respected opponents and reviewers, let me present the main results of my dissertation research on the topic Classroom Management in 7th through 9th grades, English lesson, applying the child-centered approach. The relevance of the research is determined by the large-scale transformations taking place in the system of general secondary education in Ukraine. The modernization of education, normatively grounded by the law of Ukraine on education and conceptually developed by the Reform New Ukrainian School, has actualized the transition from a teacher-centered knowledge transmission model to a learner-oriented, competence-based and activity-focused model in which the student acts as an active subject of the educational process. This issue is especially significant in foreign language teaching, where learning is inherently connected with communication, interaction, cooperation, and the social-emotional development of adolescents. The analysis of actual states of English language teaching in grades 7 through 9 made it possible to identify a number of contradictions that hinder the effective organization of learning activities. First, there is a contraction between the social need to educate on autonomous and socially mature adolescent and the predominance of in school practice of traditional classroom management models based on strict control and regulation. Second, there is a contradiction between the growing potential of the digital environment for organizing collaboration and the insufficient theoretical development of its integration into a child-centered learning. Third, there is a contradiction between adolescents' acute need for interaction and emotional support and the prevalence of frontal form of teaching that limit group communication, between the necessity to reconsider the teacher's role as a facilitator and the insufficient scientific substantiation of the pedagogical condition for implementing the child-centered approach in English lessons. In accordance with the logic of the study, the object of the research is the process of teaching English to students in grades 7 through 9 institutions of general secondary education. The subject of the research is the pedagogical conditions for classroom management of students in grades 7 through 9 in English lessons based on a child-centered approach. Our aim of the study was to determine, scientifically justify, and experimentally test the effectiveness of pedagogical conditions for classroom management of students in grades 7 through 9 in English lessons. Moving to our research hypothesis, which is presented on the screen, we assume that the effectiveness of classroom management in grades 7 through 9 English lessons would significantly increase if we implemented a pedagogical model based on a child-centered approach. Specifically, we expected that this shift would create a psychologically safe environment and foster subject-to-subject interaction, which are crucial for this age group. The scientific novelty of the obtained results lies in the following. For the first time, a pedagogical model of a classroom management of students in grades 7 through 9 in English lessons was developed and experimentally tested. This model integrates role-based interaction, socio-emotional learning, and digital technologies, and is based on 3 pedagogical conditions: organizational and subject-oriented, environmental and adaptive, and reflective and motivational. The essence of the concepts child-centered approach, organization of learning activities, classroom management, and socio-emotional learning was clarified in the context of teaching English. The conceptual foundations of teaching English and theoretical approaches to classroom management as a means of humanizing education were further developed. The theoretical significance of the research consists in the scientific substantiation of pedagogical condition for the child-centered approach, in the theoretical modeling of learning activities based on subject-to-subject interaction, and expanding the understanding of the relationship between socio-emotional development and language learning outcomes. The practical significance of the study comprises the creation of methodological toolkit, including algorithm for group work, role-play scenarios, case studies, digital templates, and diagnostic materials. These materials can be used in school practice, in teacher training, and professional development. The results of the research were implemented in the educational process of 6 secondary education institutions. The main findings are reflected in total of 22 scientific publications, including 6 articles in specialized professional journals of Ukraine, 3 articles in foreign journals, and 13 publications in conferences proceedings. The results were also presented at an international scientific and practical conferences held in Ukraine, Sweden, Bulgaria, Moldova, Israel, Spain, and the Netherlands. Let me now move on to the main content of the dissertation. In Chapter 1, the theoretical foundation of classroom management in English lessons for grades 7 through 9, applying a child-centered approach, were analyzed. The dissertation demonstrates that the organization of learning activities in English lessons should be understood not merely as a set of teaching technique, but as an integral pedagogical system of interactions that ensures the development of learner subjectivity, autonomy, responsibility, and reflective skills. It is sustained that effective classroom management in a blended learning environment requires the integration of didactic, psychological, and technological components. The chapter also shows that for adolescents, the humanization of educational process is of particular importance. English language learning at this age is directly connected with communication, interaction, cooperation, and emotional well-being. The analysis of current curricula in English textbooks for grades 7 through 9 revealed a discrepancy between the declared aims of the new Ukrainian school and the actual content of learning materials. This, in turn, confirms the necessity of reorganizing classroom activity through structured, small group interaction within a child-centered framework. According to the dissertation, such organization supports safe self-presentation of the adolescent's linguistic personality, reduces language barriers and fear of making mistakes, and changes the teacher's role from controlling to facilitating. In Chapter 2, the pedagogical conditions and the model of classroom management were justified and experimentally tested. The model includes target, content, procedural, diagnostic, and result components, and integrates cooperative learning, role-based interaction, digital solution, and socio-emotional practices within a blended educational environment. In Chapter 2, the pedagogical conditions and the model of classroom management were justified and experimentally tested. The model includes target, content, procedural, diagnostic, and result component, and integrates cooperative learning, role-based interaction, and digital solutions. The first pedagogical condition is the organizational and subject-oriented condition. It ensures subject-to-subject interaction, structured work in small heterogeneous groups, role distribution, and active involvement of every learning. For its implementation, 3 key interactive technologies were adapted and introduced. The first is the jigsaw model, in which the class is divided into home groups and expert groups. Each student becomes responsible for one part of the material and then teaches it to others. This strengthens the peer teaching and prevents passivity because the success of the whole groups depends on participation of each learning. The second is the spinner, model based on station rotation. Students move between stations such as writing, listening, speaking, and reading. This provides dynamism in variation of activity approximately every 10-15 minutes. The third one is leader model, which provides clear role distribution, such as leader, speaking, or timekeeper. These roles are rotated, with which develops responsibility, participation, and managerial skills. The second pedagogical condition is the environmental and adaptive condition. It is aimed at creating a psychologically safe and differentiated learning environment through the integration of digital tools and socio-emotional learning practices. In this context, digital tools do not function merely as an electronic textbook, but as a space for cooperation. The study used gamification platforms such as quizzes and word wall, as well as cloud collaborative services. These tools supported differentiation, interaction, and active student engagement. The third pedagogical condition is the reflective and motivational condition. It includes formative assessment, self-assessment, peer assessment, development of reflection, and enhancement of intrinsic motivation. Within this condition, the research integrated socio-emotional learning practices, including Kay Vopel's interactive games, emotional check-ins at the beginning of the lesson, and reflection circles. The experimental part of the research involved 460 students across 6 educational institutions. The pedagogical experiment included 3 main stages: ascertaining, formative, and control. The preparatory stage preceded the main experiment and had an auxiliary character. The research methods comprised questionnaires, classroom observation, testing of communicative competence, diagnostics of learning motivation and language anxiety, and methods of mathematical statistics. The design of the experiment provided for 1 control group and 4 experimental groups with different modes of implementation. In the control groups, students were taught according to traditional methodology. In experimental group 1, there were small interaction was combined with digital solution. In experimental group 2, small group interaction was combined with socio-emotional learning and creative tasks. In experimental group 3, only group work in technologies such as Spinner, Leader, and Jigsaw were implemented. And in experimental group 4, we implemented the comprehensive model was introduced through the simultaneous integration of small group interaction, digital solution, and socio-emotional learning. To assess the effectiveness of the model, several criteria were used. For the motivational criterion, the research relied on Stevens' measurement scale. For the cognitive criterion, the study used the average coefficient of the level of knowledge according to Pidlas's methodology, where the ratio of correctly completed elements to the total volume of the task is calculated. The reliability of the obtained results was confirmed by statistical analysis using Pearson's criterion or the chi-square test. The results of the formative stage demonstrated the effectiveness of the implemented model. According to the cognitive criterion, the increase in the average coefficient of the level of knowledge in the experimental groups ranged from 0.12 to 0.21, whereas in the control group, it was only 0.07. This indicates that child-centered model contributed to a more effective assimilation of educational material. According to the motivational criterion, the proportion of students who demonstrated increased interest and positive motivation reached 80.84% in the experimental groups compared with 53.8% in the control group. The dissertation interprets these results as evidence of increased positive motivation, initiative, and cognitive interest in the experimental group, and the statistical analysis confirms the reliability and stability of these changes. The qualitative analysis of the pedagogical and psychological outcomes also clarified the model proved effective. First, the organization of work in small interaction groups contributed to anxiety reduction. In particular, 46.11% of students associated such work with lower fear of public answers. Second, 80.84% of students pointed to the possibility of working at an individual pace, which reflects the adaptive and individualizing potential of the model. Third, 23.35% of students emphasized the importance of clarity of assessment criteria, which made learning requirements more transparent for them and understandable. Comparative analysis showed that the experimental group 4 demonstrated the highest effectiveness. This confirmed that the comprehensive integration of small group interaction, digital solution, and socio-emotional support produced the strongest result. According to the dissertation, socio-emotional support also minimized the risk of conflicts, while the overall system contributed to the creation of psychologically comfortable and safe educational environment for adolescents. child-centeredness is not an abstract educational
Напевне, проблеми зі зв'язком є.
Мені теж так здається. Перепідключиться зараз.
I'm sorry, something happened with my internet and I accidentally cut off. So I was talking about that for students grades 7 through 9, child-centeredness is not an abstract educational principle, but an effective methodological basis for organizing learning activities in accordance with adolescents' needs for interaction, autonomy, emotional support, and psychological safety. The organization of classroom activity in small interaction groups within a child-centered framework ensures conditions for self-presentation, reduces language barriers and fear of making mistakes, and supports the humanization of foreign language education. Second, the developed pedagogical model proved its effectiveness through the implementation of 3 pedagogical conditions: organizational and subject-oriented, environmental and adaptive, and reflective and motivational. Its implementation ensured an increase of quality of knowledge and a rise of positive motivation and cognitive interest, and a reduction of anxiety. The highest effectiveness was demonstrated by the comprehensive model in experimental group 4. Third, the developed methodological tools, including cases for the jigsaw, spinner, and leader technologies, socio-emotional support practices, digital exercises, and diagnostic materials, have practical value for English language teachers. They can be applied in school practice, teacher training, and professional development, and they enable teachers to effectively implement the requirements of the state standard of basic secondary education within the framework of the new Ukrainian school. As for the prospects for further research, the dissertation identifies several promising directions. These include adapting the proposed pedagogical conditions for profiled upper secondary school, taking into account career orientation and preparation for international examinations. The dissertation also points to the prospectivity of studying the potential of generative artificial intelligence as a personalized assistant for automated tasks, differentiation and creation of adaptive learning scenarios for small groups in real time. In addition, it is important to develop diagnostic tools for assessing the long-term impact of child-centered learning on the formation of a holistic language personality in the context of the digital transformation of education and effective teaching time in times of crisis. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Maxim Sergeyevich. Let's move on to the questions. Dear council members, who has a question to the applicant? The most serious moment. Who will be the first? The question is asked by the Doctor of Pedagogical Sciences, Professor Natalia Evgenievna.
Okay, thank you, dear colleagues, for opportunity to ask 3 questions. I'll do it in 10. So the first question is, your research focuses on organizing classroom learning activities based on a child-centered approach in a modern school. Given today's realities, how can the model of organizational subject interaction you propose be adapted for a fully so?
Maxim Sergeyevich, please.
Okay. First of all, thank you for the question. Child-centered classroom management in the digital environment is based on a change in the instructional tools while preserving its essence, namely respect for learning subjectivities. First, we employ the asynchronous digital tools such as interactive board or like Padlet or Jamboard or Figma, where adolescents can express their creativity individually at a pace convenient for them, which basically reduces the stress associated with live participation. Second, facilitation in Zoom or Teams is transferred to a breakout rooms where the teacher does not dominate those rooms and only episodically in order to support the groups appear in the group work. Third, the dissertation makes it possible to realize that the environmental and adaptive condition through gamification, for example, by the means of quizzes or word wall, which basically transforms knowledge control into an engaging game oriented towards each learner's success. This is particularly important when the psychological comfort of adolescents under condition of isolation.
Natalia Evgenina, are you satisfied with the answer?
Yes, I'm satisfied. Thank you. And the second question is, you propose changing the role of the teacher so that of a facilitator and designer of the educational environment. What professional and personal qualities of an English teacher do you think are critical for the successful implementation of a child-centered approach? And is traditional philological education sufficient to fulfill such a role? Thank you.
Thank you for your question. This is a fundamental question for our model. We believe that traditional philological training is no longer sufficient today because for the implementation of our methodology, the teacher must possess the three groups of competencies. The first one is the psychological empathy. That is the ability to perceive the adolescent learner as an equal partner and the willingness to delegate to them a certain degree of the responsibility of the lesson. The second is digital flexibility, understood not merely as a knowledge of software tools, but as ability to adapt content quickly to the interest of a specific class, that is to carry our digital design of the lesson, taking into account how fast the pace of developing AI we have today. The third is moderating competence, namely the ability is to manage conflicts and simulate discussion without resorting to an authoritarian methods. With this reason, we emphasize the importance of teachers' continuous professional self-development or lifelong learning as an important element of the organizational and subject orientation condition.
Thanks a lot. Natalia Evgenina, are you satisfied with the answer?
Yes, I'm satisfied, and I have the last question. So, adolescence is heterogeneous. A 7th grader and 9th grader have different levels of autonomy. Does your methodology provide the differentiations of methods of organizing classroom learning activities depending on the dynamics of the students' maturation within high school?
Yes, our methodology can provide for gradual evolution of learner subjectivity from grade 7 to grade 9. In grade 7, we place the emphasis on a game-based interaction and the creation of a situation of success, since adolescents at this stage still require a clean structure and substantial teacher support. Here, methods of environmental adaptation predominate. In grade 8, the focus shifts towards group project activity, social interaction, where the teacher increasingly moves toward into the role of consultant. When in grade 9, taking into account the growth of intellectual maturity, we maximize the implementation of the reflective and motivational condition. Learners are involved in self-assessment, in choosing individual trajectories for studying topics, and the long-term research projects. Thus, we move from managing the child to learner management under the teacher's guidance. So basically, the teachers become a facilitator of learning rather than direct instructor in those later grades.
Thanks a lot. Are you satisfied, Natalia Evgenina?
Yes, I'm satisfied. Thank you for your answers.
Okay, so the question is asked by the Doctor of Pedagogical Sciences, Professor Svetlana Alexandrovna Shekhavtsova.
Thank you. Thank you. I also have 3 questions. That is why I will ask one by one. The first question is the following. According to your research, you have identified 3 key pedagogical conditions. Which of them, in your opinion, has proven to be the most difficult to implement in the real conditions of modern school, in particular in the condition of blended learning, and how can an English teacher overcome the resistance of the traditional teacher-centered model of learning?
Thank you for the question. Well, the most difficult condition to implement proved to be the organizational and subject-oriented condition, which requires a shift from the teacher's authoritarian role to a subject-to-subject model of interaction. At adolescence at grades 7 through 9, learners undergo complex emotional changes, which often manifest themselves to disruptive behavior or low motivation. To overcome the resistance to the traditional model, we propose the following. Delegation of responsibility through the use of small heterogeneous groups in which each learner has a clear defined role, like for example in the leader activity, leader, secretary, timekeeper, thus encouraging autonomy rather than passive passive waiting of teachers' instruction. A change in the teacher's position from a transmitter of knowledge to a facilitator and organizer of educational environment, and structured cooperation through the introduction of clear collaborative algorithms that minimize classroom disorder and create a sense of security for learning, for the learner.
Svetlana Alexandrovna, are you satisfied?
Thank you. Thank you. I'm satisfied. And the second question is the following. In your speech, you have emphasized the significance of the social interaction and emotional support for adolescents during foreign language learning. How does the use of digital technologies and tools such as online games and puzzles mentioned contribute to the development of social emotional skills and not only cognitive abilities of students?
Well, in our study, the digital technologies are not viewed as an end in themselves, but as a tool for creating a psychologically safe environment, which corresponds to the environmental and adaptive condition. Socio-emotional development through digital tools occurs in the following ways. Reducing of the language barrier, since the digital role-playing games and online storytelling enable the adolescents to express themselves in a less stressful format than direct public speaking. Development of empathy and cooperation as joint work of digital puzzles or projects in real life requires learners to negotiate, distribute tasks, discuss, and support one another, which directly fosters soft skills like critical thinking, negotiation, etc. And enhancement of emotional comfort, because the interaction of digital solutions familiar to the adolescents makes the learning process more child-friendly in the context with the principle of child-centeredness. So basically, kids are brought into their comfortable learning environment, which they know.
Yes, thank you, Максим Сергійовичу. Are you satisfied, Світлана Олександрівна?
Yes, I completely satisfied. Thank you. And the last question will be the next. In the text of the thesis, you operate with indicators of quality of knowledge. However, your developed model also includes such parameters as intrinsic motivation and subjective activity. Please clarify whether there was a direct correlation between the increase in the level of the subjective activity of a student in the grades 7 to 9 and the direct increase in the communicative competence in English.
Thank you for your question. Yes, our study confirmed the presence of direct correlation. A learner's subjective activity constitutes the foundation for the development of communicative competence. The mechanism of this relationship is as follows. Basically, when a learner demonstrates intrinsic motivation and activity, which corresponds to the reflectional and motivational condition, they cease to fear making mistakes in speech. The results of the quantitative and qualitative analysis of the experiment show that learners with a higher level of subjective activity demonstrated better outcomes precisely in the communicative aspect. They entered into the dialogue more freely, initiated communication in English more, let's say, readily, and used compensatory strategies more effectively. Therefore, in the context of child-centeredness, quality of knowledge should be understood not as merely a sum of memorized words, but as the ability to use language actively and consciously as means of self-expression and communication.
Maxim Sergeyevich. So the question is asked by the candidate of Pedagogical Sciences, Associate Professor Olga Goncharova.
Thank you, Irina Yakimna. So, dear Maxim Sergeyevich, I've got 3 questions as well. And the first one is, you chose students of basic secondary school as the object of your research. What psychological feature of adolescence became the decisive argument for the implementation of child-centered approach to organizing classroom learning activities?
Thank you for your question, Ms. Olga. Adolescence is critically important because of the shift in the leading type of activity from learning to personal communication. We see that in class all the time in those grade 7s, right? During the period, the traditional authoritarian management based on the principle the teacher said, the student did, may provoke resistance in the classroom. Our model of child-centered classroom management makes use of this age-specific need for autonomy. We transform the lesson into a space for self-expression where English becomes an instrument of socializations that enables adolescents to express his or her own significance and consequently increases motivation.
Thanks a lot. Are you satisfied, Olga Anatolievna?
Yes, I am, and it's very evident that Maxim Sergeyevich is living through his dissertation because of this emotional response. And my second question, child-centeredness implies attention to each child. How does your model help to involve students with different levels of language proficiency, language preparation, in active work in an English classroom? I mean, how do you imply this differentiation of learning?
Thank you for this question. This is realized through differentiation and individual learning trajectories. In a child-centered classroom, the teacher does not offer one task for all learners, but rather a choice of formats. For example, a learner with the lower language proficiency may begin with a visual project, such as interactive poster made in Canva or Figma, which requires a smaller amount language material, but still ensures success in creative activity. For higher level students, we could offer them to write an article for the very same topic, utilizing the very same vocabulary, but that shifts from a simple outcome to a more complex outcome. So this simulates
It's
further
enough. Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot. Olga Anatolievna, are you satisfied with the
Yes,
answer?
I'm completely satisfied, and I've got one more question, the final one from me. The model you created requires a high level of empathy and digital literacy from the teachers. What piece of advice would you give to teachers who are used to complete just to teach their discipline and to practice authoritarian style of teaching?
Well, I would advise them to begin by delegating small elements of control. It is appropriate gradually to give students the right to choose, for example, the sequence of exercises in the lesson or the background music during the written work. Child-centeredness does not mean chaos. Rather, it is a transition from control through coercion of control through engagement. When the teacher sees the student work more actively when they are given a voice, the teacher's own emotional burnout decreases since he or she is no longer carry the whole class alone.
Thanks a lot, Максиме Сергійовичу. Are you satisfied, Olga Anatolievna?
Yes, fully. Thank you.
So the question is asked by the candidate of pedagogical sciences, associate professor Alina Viktorivna Maslova.
Максиме Сергійовичу, in your presentation, you were demonstrating a model which comprises 3 groups of pedagogical conditions. So would you please explain why you have singled out these conditions? I mean, organizational subject, environmental adaptive, and reflective motivational, and how they are interconnected.
Thank you for the question. These 3 conditions form an integral system. The environmental and adaptive condition creates a safe space, including a digital one. The organizational and subject-oriented condition changes the role of a teacher and learner into partnership-based ones. And the reflective and motivational condition enables learner to become aware of his or her own progress. The removal of any of those conditions significantly reduces the effectiveness of the model. Without the environment, there will be no comfort. Without the change of roles, there will be no activity. And without the reflection, there will be no sustainable result.
Thanks a lot. Are you satisfied, Alina Viktorivna?
Completely satisfied. And my second question is connected with the fact that one of the biggest problems in grades 7 through 9 is the fear of making mistakes. So what elements of your child-centered approach to organizing classroom learning activities in English lessons directly contribute to reducing your students' anxiety when speaking?
Thank you very much for this question. We achieve this through introduction of what may conditionally be termed as psychological moratorium of criticism and of mistakes. At the stage of speech initiation, Within the framework of the organizational and subject-oriented condition, the teacher becomes an assistant facilitator. When learner understands that his or her subjective opinion is valued more highly than the perfect pronunciation or a made mistake, anxiety decreases. The use of game-based digital platform also adds an element of play, where a mistake is simply a part of the game process rather than a verdict in the register.
Yes, thanks a lot. Alina Viktorівна, are you satisfied?
Satisfied, yeah. Thanks a lot, Maxim Sergeyevich. And the final question is connected also with your research. It is limited to grades 7 through 9. But do you consider it appropriate to extrapolate the developed model to high school students, grades 10 through 12, for example, taking into account the preparation to national multi-subject test?
This model remains relevant for upper secondary school as well, but with the emphasis on self-management. Preparation for tests often causes stress. In grades 10 and 11, the child-centered approach should help the learner to plan and map out his or her own schedule, choose preparation courses, and exercise self-control. At this stage, elements of the andragogical approach may be traced, where the teacher helps the senior student become an autonomous learner prepared to study at a university.
Thanks a lot. Alina Viktorівna, are you satisfied with the answer?
Thanks a lot. Completely satisfied.
Thank you. I also have a few questions. Maxim Sergeyevich, in your dissertation, you use the term child-centered approach. Please explain whether it is identical to the English term learner-centered approach, or do you see in child-centeredness a deeper educational aspect which is specific to Ukrainian educational context? You may answer in brief.
Thank you. Although these concepts are closely related, we see a substantial difference between them. The learner-centered approach is generally understood as a methodological strategy focused primarily on the learner's cognitive tests. By the contrast, the child-centered approach on which we rely may be regarded as a broader philosophical and pedagogical concept rooted in the tradition of Sukhomlinsky and Bech, which encompasses not only instruction but also upbringing, emotional protection, and the creation of an environment in which a child is the subject of managing his or her own life. Within the framework of new Ukrainian school, this means not merely selecting engaging exercises, but contrasting a democratic classroom ecosystem.
I am completely satisfied. And my next question. In your dissertation, you mention online games, puzzles, digital projects, activities. Don't you think that excessive enthusiasm for digitalization can harm live communication, which is a priority in English learning?
In our study, digital tools such as those games, puzzles, and projects, they do not replace communication, but rather stimulate it. For example, the collaborative creation of an online presentation or quest requires students to interact constantly in English. They discuss the design, distribute roles, and debate the content. In this context, the digital medium function as a kind of, third partner in interaction, reducing psychological tension and the language barrier that often arises in the direct communication.
I'm satisfied, so thanks a lot. And my last question. In the experimental part of your dissertation, you claim an increase in students' motivation. By what indirect signs, apart from questionnaires, did you notice these changes during pedagogical observation?
Thank you for the question. One of the most indicative markers was the growth of initiative. Students in the experimental groups began independently proposing discussion topics, bringing their own digital findings and more frequently asking clarifying questions in English. We observed a shift from the position of a passive listener to that of a co-organizer of a lesson. In addition, group dynamics improved considerably. Adolescents became more tolerant of one another's mistake and more willing to provide mutual support.
I'm totally satisfied. Thank you. Dear colleagues, what other questions do you have? I don't see any more raised hands. So let's go to the next stage of the procedure of defense, discussion of the dissertation. The Council received feedback from official opponents and reviews from reviewers, which were published on time on the website of Bogdan Khmelnytsky Melitopol State Pedagogical University in accordance with the requirements of the resolution. I would like to mention that all feedback and reviews are positive. Therefore, I propose to proceed the discussion of the presented dissertation work. I would like to invite the official opponent, Doctor of Pedagogical Sciences, Professor of the Department of Pedagogy of State Institution, Luhansk Taras Shevchenko National University, Svetlana Alexandrovna Shekhovtsova, to present her review for the dissertation.
Thank you very much. I also kindly ask permission not to read the whole review, just to draw the main points of my review. Is it possible?
Yes, it's possible.
Thank you. I would like to start from the actuality of the dissertation topic. The dissertation is devoted to the current topic of classroom management in the 7th, 9th grades English lesson according to the child-centered approach. Because classroom management plays a crucial role in creating an effective learning environment, especially in English learning lessons for students grades 7 to 9. At this stage, adolescents experience significant cognitive, social, and emotional changes, which can affect their motivation, attention, and behavior in classroom. Effective classroom management stages are therefore essential to promote active learning, minimizing disruptive behavior, and support students' overall development. Applying a child-centered approach is particularly relevant in today's educational context, as it is emphasize the individual needs, interests, and abilities of students. This approach encourages learning autonomy, collaboration, and engagement, allowing students to take an active role in their learning process. In English lessons, where communication, creativity, and critical thinking are central, despite of the growing recognition of child-centered methods, many teachers still face challenges in implementing them effectively due to large class size, diverse learning needs, and traditional teacher-centered practice. Investigated classroom management strategies that align with the child-centered approach can provide valuable insights for educators, contributing to an environment of English language teaching in secondary school and supporting the holistic development of learners. The chosen topic of this research is aimed at overcoming the contradictions between growing potential of digital and blended learning environments for organizing active educational interaction, collaboration, and student self-regulation, and in insufficient theoretical and methodological development of issues related to the integration of digital technologies into child-centered organization of learning activities in English lessons at secondary school. Between adolescents' needs for social interaction, emotional support, and development of social emotional skills in the process of learning a foreign language. Between the necessity to rethink the role of the English teacher as a facilitator and organizer of learning interaction, and the lack of scientifically developed pedagogical conditions for implementing the child-centered approach in the organization of learning activities for students in the grades 7 to 9. The degree of validity of the scientific provisions, conclusions, and recommendations formulated in the dissertation. The content and structure of the research respond to the task set. The conceptual and categorical apparatus is consistent and strict, and its logic is sufficiently substantiated. The dissertation has certain unique characteristics, a conceptual idea of scientific research. They also logically and reasonably formulated the conceptual provisions and became the basis for the development of pedagogical conditions for the implementation of a child-centered approach in the classroom management in the grades 7 to 9 English lessons. Analysis of the dissertation manuscript and the content of the dissertation publication, in particular in the text of professional articles, allows us to draw a conclusion regarding the scientific validity and reliability of the presented results. It should be noted that the author of the dissertation studied a wide source base in various languages covering 278 titles, 229 in Ukrainian and 49 in English, and studied regulatory and legislative educational documents that regulate the process of teaching English to students in the grades 7 to 9 in secondary school. The scientific substantiation of the dissertation topic, the elaboration and justification of the conceptual apparatus, the completely formulated goal, objectives, and scientific novelty, the research indicates the author's ability to deeply analyze the state of development of the problem and solve the tasks set. The connection of the dissertation with scientific programs, plan, and topics. The dissertation research was carried out in accordance with the thematic plan of the scientific research works of the Department of Education Study and Art Pedagogical and the Department of Germanic Philology and Germanic Languages Teachers Methods of Bogdan Khmelnytsky Melitopol State Pedagogical University. Speaking about the researcher presents the author's interpretation of a key concept of the study as a leading paradigm of contemporary education, emphasizing the recognition of the students as an active subject of the learning process whose individual needs, interests, abilities, and personal experience must be considered. The also focuses on the content, essence, and structure of communicative competence of students in the grade 7 to 9. Communicative competence was defined as a complex, multi-component phenomena that includes linguistics, speech, social-cultural, social-linguistic discourse, and strategic competencies. It confirms that the integration of a child-centered approach, communicative orientation, and effective classroom management forms a holistic pedagogical system that enhances the quality of English language teaching in the grades 7 to 9. In accordance with the theoretical foundation of the study and the specific diagnostics of communicative competence and educational activity of students in the grade 7 to 9, on the basis of child-centered classroom management in English lessons, they also developed and substantiated pedagogical conditions. I don't name them because our Maxim Sergeyevich also has named them, and I follow that the effectiveness of pedagogical conditions for managing a class of students in the grades of 7 to 9 in English lesson based on a child-centered approach was proven by Maxim Sergeyevich Rutkovsky due to appropriate diagnostic and pedagogical tools. The author's vision of the substantive feeling of their communicative competence of students in the grades 7 to 9 based on child-centered classroom management in English lessons and the implementation of pedagogical conditions based on the author's developed classroom management model, which includes target content such as procedural, diagnostic, and outcome components, which integrated cooperative learning, role-playing, interaction, digital solutions, and social-emotional practices within the framework of a blended educational environment. The reliability of the research results in ensured, but in particular by a combination of quantitative and qualitative analysis of experimental data and the selection of mathematical statistics methods adequate to the logic of the research during the control stage. Thus, the experimental study confirmed the formulated theoretical provisions of the dissertation work. A full statement of scientific results in the dissertation work in published work. The main content of the work and the result of the research are covered by the author in 22 publications, including 6 articles in scientific professional publications of Ukraine, 2 articles in foreign journals, and 1 article in international journal, and 13 articles in the collections of proceedings, of conference proceedings. Dissertation points and comments on the dissertation. Despite the overall positive assessment of the dissertation, we would like to make some comments and wishes. Namely, the first one is the titles of the dissertation chapters and sections don't reflect the subject of the research. For example, pedagogical conditions for managing a class, and so on and so forth. So it is unclear in which section the pedagogical conditions were theoretically substantiated, as well as in which section their implementation took place. The second one, the text of the dissertation doesn't contain references of appendices in which stages should one refer to a specific appendix in order not to lose the logic of the research. The third one, the experimental work, they also presents indicators of the quality of students' knowledge in English language in different tables. However, the model presents such indicators and internal motivation, subjective activity, reflexivity, level of communicative competence. In Appendix B, there also presents the essence of concept of humanization of education in psychological and pedagogical research. We consider it would be much more substantial to make tables of the key concept in the dissertation, namely organization of educational activity and child-centered approach. Appendixes B, K, and L presented technologies for interaction groups, joint online storytelling, digital role-playing games, online reading circle, and others. However, it would have been described in the context of the dissertation how such technologies influences students and by which indicators and within what pedagogical condition they were implemented. And the last one, while generally recognizing the scientific role of the dissertation text, we note that work contains some spelling and stylistics mistakes. The above comments and wishes are of a recommendatory nature and don't significantly affect the quality of the dissertation research. The analysis of the dissertation, annotation and published papers given in grounds for concluding that the dissertation by Maxim Sergeyevich Rudkovsky, classroom management, classroom management in the 7-9 grades, English lessons according to the child-centered approach, is an independent, completed scientific research that has scientific novelty, theoretical and practical significance for pedagogical science and practice. We believe that the dissertation deserves a positive assessment and highlights the requirements for the design of a dissertation approved by the order of the Ministry of Education and Science of Ukraine. And it's also Maxim Sergeyevich Rudkovsky deserves the award of the degree of Doctor of Philosophy in the specialty 0111 Educational Pedagogical Sciences, Field of Knowledge 01 Education Pedagogy. Thank you.
Thank you, Svetlana Alexandrovna, for your report on the dissertation of the applicant. The floor is given to Maxim Sergeyevich to answer the discussion points and comments. You are welcome.
Thank you. First of all, I would like to express our sincerely gratitude to the esteemed Ms. Svetlana Alexandrovna for such in-depth analysis of our dissertation. Regarding the reflection of the research subject in subsection titles, thank you very much for the comment. We do agree with the comment regarding the expediency of more directly reflecting the research subject in the subsection titles. At the same time, we would note that following the theoretical substantiation of the pedagogical conditions logically follows the form of the analysis presented in subsection 1.3, theoretical justification of child-centered classroom management in English lessons. The direct implementation of experimental verification of these conditions are described in subsection 2.2, implementation of child-centered organization of classroom learning activity in English lessons in grades 7 through 9, where each stage is of implementing the identified conditions is specified in detail. Regarding the references to the appendices in the text, thank you very much for this very valid comment. We acknowledge that expanding the system of cross references would definitely contribute to a better navigation through the study. We will certainly take this recommendation into account in order to establish a clear connection between the theoretical provisions and extensive illustrative material presented in the 13 appendices A to M, which contain diagnostic instrumentals and instruments and the author's own material. Regarding the tables of key concepts in Appendix B, your suggestion is highly appropriate for the systematization of the conceptual framework. In the text of the dissertation in Chapter 1, we devoted considerable attention to defining these concepts. In particular, we consider the child-centered approach not merely as a set of methods, but as a philosophical foundation for organizing classroom learning activities, clarifying these concepts in the form of comparative tables. In the appendices, we would need have enhanced the clarity of the study, and we will certainly take this into the account. Regarding the description of the impact of technologies, online games, and puzzles on students, thank you very much for this question. The impact of these technologies was assessed within the framework of environmental and adaptive condition. These technologies primarily influence students' emotional state and level of engagement. The main indicators were the reduction of the psychological barrier in foreign language communication and increase in initiative in group work, as recorded in diagnostic results presented in Chapter 2. Thank you. Regarding the orthographic and stylistic inaccuracies, thank you very much for your attentive reading of the dissertation. We fully agree with this comment. Unfortunately, some technical errors did occur, and we will certainly carry out a thorough proofreading of the text before submitting the dissertation to the archive and make a further use of the materials. In general, we're sincerely grateful to Ms. Svetlana for this in-depth analysis of our dissertation and for very valuable comments, which we fully accept and will duly take into account.
Thank you, Maxim Sergeyevich, for the answers. Svetlana Alexandrovna, are you satisfied with the answer of the applicant?
Yes, completely satisfied. Thank you.
Okay, let's go on. Dear colleagues, the floor is given to the official opponent, Doctor of Pedagogical Sciences, Professor of the Department of Foreign Languages of Vinnytsia Mikhailo Kotyubinsky State Pedagogical University, Natalia Evgenievna Dmitrenko. You are welcome.
Thank you. So, dear members of the Specialized Academic Council, dear colleagues, I am pleased to present the review of the official opponent for the dissertation research by Maxim Vitkovsky, titled Classroom Management in 7/9 Grades English Lessons Applying the Child-Centered Approach, submitted for a Doctor of Philosophy degree, field of study 01 Education, specialty 011 Educational Pedagogical Sciences. So the relevance of the dissertation by Maxim Rudkovsky is driven by the transformational process in Ukraine's general secondary education, specifically the implementation of the new Ukrainian school reform, which emphasizes the humanization and democratization of schooling. The current educational paradigm requires a shift from a traditional authoritarian teacher-centered model to a learner-centered, competence-based approach where the child is an active subject of the educational process. The shift is particularly critical in foreign language teaching for adolescents 7-9 grades, where educational activities are directly linked to communication, collaboration, and social-emotional development. The need to bridge the gap between traditional classroom management and the requirements of modern digital and blended learning environments further underscores the timelessness of this research. So the study addresses several key contradictions, mainly between the societal need to foster autonomous, socially mature adolescence and the predominance of traditional strict classroom management in English lessons. It also highlights the lack of scientifically grounded pedagogical conditions that integrate digital technologies and social-emotional learning into a child-centered framework. The object of the study is the process of teaching English to students in grades 7-9 in general secondary educational institutions. The subject is the pedagogical conditions for classroom management of these students in English lessons based on a child-centered approach. The primary aim is to determine, scientifically justify, and experimentally test the effectiveness of pedagogical conditions for classroom management of 7-9 grades in English lessons, implemented on the basis of a child-centered approach. To resolve these contradictions, the author established 4 rigorous objectives: theoretical synthesis, analyzing the evolution of child-centered theory and clarifying the conceptual apparatus of classroom management within new Ukrainian school framework; model construction, designing a comprehensive child-centered model for classroom management in 7-9 grade English lessons; conditional substantiation, theoretically justifying the specific pedagogical conditions required to activate the child-centered approach; and experimental validation, testing the efficacy of the developed model and conditions through empirical classroom application. These objectives align perfectly with the national mandate to redefine the teacher's role as a facilitator of learning interaction. So the dissertation is closely connected to broader academic initiatives. It was carried out in accordance with the thematic plan of scientific research at Bogdan Khmelnytsky Melitopol State Pedagogical University. Specifically, it forms a component of 2 state-registered research themes: training of future specialists in pedagogical education in the context of European educational integration, and creating a safe, flexible, multilingual educational environment for the effective training of future teachers in the context of classroom, distance, and blended learning. The explicit alignment ensures the practical integration of the author's findings into the broader European educational integrational process. By focusing on the creation of safe, multilingual environments, the research provides a validated pathway for Ukrainian education to meet international standards of psychological safety and instructional flexibility. The scientific novelty lies in the fact that the author is the first to identify, theoretically substantiate, and experimentally validate 3 specific pedagogical conditions: organizational, subjective, environmental, adaptive, and reflexive motivational for a child-centered approach in 7-9 grades English lessons. Contributions to knowledge theoretical significance is based on the fact that the author expands the theoretical understanding of child-centeredness as a methodological basis for organizing learning activities and clarifies the relationship between adolescent social emotional development and foreign language learning effectiveness. Contribution to the practice is a care that the author created a highly applicable methodological booklet, including algorithm for small group work and digital templates, which can be directly used by English teachers and in teacher training programs. The reliability of the results is confirmed by a robust experimental design involving 460 students across multiple schools utilizing diverse empirical methods, questionnaires, testing, and observation, and rigorous mathematical statistics such as a Pearson's gradation. Furthermore, in a co-authored publication, the primary material processing and conclusions belong inclusively to the researcher. The author successfully developed and implemented a holistic pedagogical model for classroom management that integrates cooperative learning, social-emotional practices, and digital solutions. Personally obtained experimental results demonstrate that this small group interactive system significantly enhances academic achievement, positive motivation, and cognitive interest in learning English. The author proved that psychological comfort, clear role distribution in heterogeneous groups, and formative assessment reduce language anxiety and foster 21st century skills like critical thinking, collaboration, and digital literacy. The author's personal contribution to the field of substantiation evidenced by a rigorous publication record that details specific advancements in pedagogical theory. The dissertation is well structured and logical. It consists of an introduction, 2 main chapters with corresponding conclusions, general conclusions, and a list of references and appendices. The total volume of the work is 292 pages, including 196 pages of main text, enriched with 14 tables and 5 figures. The text is written in a professional scientific style. The author demonstrates a strong command of pedagogical and psychological terminology, effectively synthesizing historical perspectives with modern educational frameworks. The structural logic, moving from theoretical foundations to child-centeredness in Chapter 1 to experimental testing and statistical analysis in Chapter 2, facilitates a clear understanding of how child-centered concepts are operationalized. The academic style is authoritative and intellectually rigorous, reflecting the author's maturity and expertise in the field of pedagogical science. While generally positively evaluating the scientific and practical significance of the results obtained by the dissertation author, certain discussion points and comments should be highlighted as well as some wishes expressed. On page 68, the definition of communicative competence is presented without indicating the author of this definition, and a brief description of some components, linguistic, speech, social-cultural, social-linguistic is also provided. While the discursive and strategic components are left out, or should have provided a definite analysis of the term communicative competence, focusing specifically on the foreign language communicative competence and its components. On page 156, the questionnaires used during the experiment are presented without indicating the authorship and clarifications regarding adaptation. Inconsistencies were noted between the pedagogical model, page 139, and the description of the experiment, names and number of criteria, page 157, number of levels, page 164. The modes and methods presented on page 84 would have been easier to understand if they had been presented in the form of a table with comparative characteristics. And in the conclusions to the second part, page 161, and in the annotation, page 4 and page 9, a low motivation decreased is mentioned. It should be appropriate to provide clarification regarding the object of the measurement. However, the expressed remarks and discussion points do not negate positive assessment of the scientific level of the dissertation work. Ultimately, this dissertation is a significant contribution to humanization and modernization of Ukrainian education, providing a clear and statistically validated roadmap for fostering autonomous, socially competent and psychologically resilient individuals. So on the basis of the conducted analysis, it can be concluded that in terms of its relevance, the significant amount of research carried out, scientific novelty, the reliability of the results obtained, the validity of the conclusion, the structure of the paper, this dissertation by Maxim Rudkovsky, Classroom Management in 7 9th grades English lessons applying the child-centered approach, submitted for a Doctor of Philosophy degree, field of study 01, Education Specialty 011, Educational Pedagogical Sciences, meets the requirements of the procedure for awarding the degree of Doctor of Philosophy and concealing the decision of the one-time specialized academic council of the Institution of Higher Education, scientific institution on awarding the degree of Doctor of Philosophy, approved by the resolution of the Cabinet of Ministers of Ukraine dated January 12, 2024, number 44, the author of the dissertation, Maxim Rudkovsky, deserves to be awarded the degree of Doctor of Philosophy in the specialty 011, Educational Pedagogical Sciences. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Natalia Evgenievna, for your report on the dissertation of our applicant. The floor is given to Maxim Sergeyevich to answer the discussion points and comments.
First of all, let me express my extreme gratitude to respected Ms. Natalia Evgenievna for deep analysis of our work and all the comments and all the suggestions. In regard to the response to the comments regarding the definition and components of communicative competence on page number 68, we sincerely thank the esteemed opponent for the profound engagement with the theoretical part of our study and for the valid comment concerning the presentation of the concept of communicative competence on page 68. With regard to the absence of a reference to the author of the specific definition on the indicated page, we acknowledge the technical oversight. In the dissertation, we relied on the generally recognized concept based on the provisions of the Common European Framework of References for Languages and the works of Ukrainian scholars. However, we agree that a direct citation would have strengthened the scientific precision and subsection. As to the comment concerning the omission of the discourse and strategic components at the stage of the theoretical review on page 68, we indeed focused on the linguistic, speech and socio-cultural and social-linguistic aspects, since these are the most demonstrative for diagnostic purposes in grades 7 through 9 within the framework of our experiment. At the same time, we fully agree with the opponent's position that a foreign language communicative competence is an integral phenomenon. Although the discourse component, the ability to construct coherent utterances, and the strategic component were not distinguished as separate subpoints in the description of the on that page, they were de facto taken into account in the development of the author's tasks and online projects, particularly in game-based situations and group work described in chapter 2, where learners were required to use compensatory strategies and to structure logic of dialogue. We fully accept recommendation concerning the need for a more extensive definitional analysis of the term foreign language communicative competence, and will certainly take this into account of our future scholarly publications. Response to the comment regarding the authorship and adaptation of questionnaires on page 156. We're grateful to the esteemed opponent for a valid comment regarding the presentation of the diagnostic instruments on page 156. With regard to the absence of indicator concerning the authorship and adaptation of the questions, we would like to provide the following clarification. As for the origin of the instruments, During the ascertaining and formative stages of the experiment, we used a set of questionnaires that constitute the author's own development, designed specifically to verify the effectiveness of the pedagogical conditions for organizing classroom learning activities on the basis of child-centered approach identified in our study. In developing these questionnaires, we relied on the methodological recommendation concerning the assessment of learning subjectivity and motivation. However, the questions themselves and their structure were formulated by us with due regard to the specific features of teaching English in grades 7 through 9. In particular, we were guided by the methodological foundations of diagnosis adolescence subjectivity set out in the works of Ivan Bech, as well as by Arthur Reen's diagnostic instruments for assessing achievement motivation. In addition, we took into account the methodological recommendation of the Ministry of Education and Science of Ukraine concerning the assessment of learning outcomes within the new Ukrainian school, where special attention is paid to a learning self-reflection. Our adaptation consisted in integrating these psychological indicators into the context of a foreign language educational environment, which made it possible to measure not only the level of knowledge, but also the level of learners' involvement in managing their own learning. In those cases, where we used elements of standard psychological questionnaires, for example, to determine the level of anxiety or social interaction, we carried out their linguistic and didactic adaptation. This involved simplifying the wording for adolescents and learner and translating the terminology into the context of a foreign language instruction. In developing the diagnostic instruments, we synthesized Nikolaeva's methodological approaches to measuring language skills with the psychological and pedagogical foundation of subjectivity sustained in the works of Beck. The author's adaptation consisted in combining these three vectors in order to assess how the organization of classroom learning activities on the basis of a child-centered approach influences the learner readiness for communication. We fully agree with the opponent that the dissertation text on page 156 should have explicitly stated the questionnaire was developed or adapted by the author of the study. This would indeed have removed questions regarding the validity of the diagnostic instruments. We're sincerely grateful for this comment and will certainly add the relevant clarification to the explanatory notes in the appendices and in the preparation of publication based on dissertation results. Response to the comment regarding inconsistencies between the model on page 139 and the description of the experiment on pages 157 and 164. We sincerely thank the esteemed opponent for the meticulous analysis of the structural logic of our study. The comment regarding certain discrepancies between the theoretical model and the description of the experiment is highly valid, and we would like to provide the following explanation. Regarding the titles and numbers of criteria on page 157, the theoretical model presented on the page 139 reflects the ideal structure of a child-centered classroom management as an integral pedagogical phenomenon. However, at the stage of experimental validation on page 157, we were compelled to operationalize these theoretical constructs. We grouped certain elements of the model into specific diagnostic criteria that were amendable to a quantitative measurement, for example, communicative, cognitive, and motivational criteria. This was done in order to ensure the mathematical precision of statistical data processing without losing the substantive content of the model. Regarding the number of levels on page 164, in the model we distinguished qualitative characteristics of the level subjectively. However, during the experiment and the statistical analysis of the results, we came to the conclusion that it was expedient to use a three-level system, low, medium, high, which is generally accepted standard in pedagogical research for obtaining a representative comparative characteristic of a control and experimental groups. We acknowledge that terminological unification between the theoretical and practical chapters could have been more precise. At the same time, these do not constitute the fundamental contradictions, but rather reflect the process of adapting a broad pedagogical theory to the requirements of specific experimental measurements. We fully accept the comment and will take this into account the need to stricter terminological correspondence between modeling and experimentation in our further work. Regarding the response to the comment of the presentation of methods and working modes on page 84. We would like to thank the esteemed opponent for the constructive comment concerning the form of presentation of the scientific results on page 84 of our study. We fully agree with Professor Dmitrenko's view that the use of tabular format with comparative characteristics would have considerably strengthened the visual clarity and facilitated the perception of the modes and methods of organizing classroom learning activities on the basis of a child-centered approach proposed in dissertation. We would like to note the following. In subsection 1.3, we sought to provide a detailed account for a qualitative specificity of each method from traditional to innovative digital ones, which required an extensive textual description in order to substantiate their influence of adolescent subjectively. Had we constructed such a table, the main comparison criteria would have included the degree of learner autonomy, the teacher's role, the type of interaction, and the level of use of digital tools. This recommendation is exceptionally valuable for our further work. We will certainly develop such a summarizing table of comparative characteristics for methodological recommendation addressed to English teachers in order to make the implementation of our model more technological and more comprehensible for practitioners. Once again, we thank the opponent for the advice, which has enabled us to identify ways of improving the presentation of our research result. Regarding the response to the comment on clarification of the object of motivation measurements on pages 4, 9, and 191. We would like to thank the opponent for the comment concerning the precision of the presentation of the experiment results. As to the phrase low motivation decreased, we confirm that it requires clarification of both the object and the indicators of measurement. We would therefore like to provide the following explanation. The object of measurement was the learning motivation of grades 7 through 9 learners towards the study English, which we regarded as an integral indicator of the reflective and motivational condition. For diagnostic purposes, we used a methodology for determining the levels of learning motivation based on the ratio between external motives and internal motives. By the wording low motivation decreased, we meant the quantitative reduction in the proportion of learners who at the ascertaining stage demonstrated an external type of motivation or amotivation. As a result of implementing the child-centered organization of classroom activities, these learners move into the groups with medium and high levels characterized by the predominance of internal stimuli for learning. We agree that these conclusions, and in the abstract, it would have been more appropriate to use the following formulation: a statistically significant increase in indicators of intrinsic motivation and reduction of the number of learners with a low level of involvement in learning activity were observed. We're grateful for this clarification, and as it makes it possible to emphasize more precisely the psychological and pedagogical effect to our methodology. Esteemed opponent, once again, I sincerely thank you for such a profound, meticulous, and at the same time benevolent examination of my dissertation research. Your comments and recommendations have not only helped me to present the results of the study more clearly during today's defense, but have also become valuable guidelines for my further scholarly and practical work. All the recommendation expressed will certainly be taken into account. Thank you for your attention and for the opportunity to engage in this scholarly discussion.
Thank you, Maxima Sergeyevich, for your answers. Natalia Evgenievna, are you satisfied with the answers?
Yes, I am completely satisfied. Thank you.
The floor is given to the reviewer, candidate of Pedagogical Sciences, Associate Professor of the Department of Germanic Philology and Germanic Languages Teaching Methodology of Bogdan Khmelnytsky Melitopol State Pedagogical University, Olga Anatolievna Goncharova.
Thank you, Irina Yakimna. The contemporary relevance of this research lies in the critical intersection of adolescent developmental psychology and the evolving paradigms of communicative language teaching within the 7th-9th grade corridor. As learners in this age navigate a heightened quest for autonomy and social identity, traditional teacher-led management models often encounter resistance, leading to diminished engagement and linguistic inhibition. By situating classroom management within a child-centered approach, this study addresses the urgent pedagogical need to transition from extrinsic control to intrinsic motivation, fostering a low effective filter environment essential for foreign language acquisition. Thus, the relevance of the dissertation topic and research is beyond doubt, as it addresses the pedagogical necessity of reconciliating the structural demands of the secondary English language classroom management with the psychological imperatives of adolescent learners. I would like to say that the structural integrity of this dissertation reflects a sophisticated command of scientific inquiry. The findings carry a high level of credibility, substantiated by a theoretical framework and a holistic, multifaceted analysis of the underlying scholarly discourse. Not only does the work satisfy the fundamental benchmarks of academic relevance, original contribution, and prospective utility, but it also demonstrates a mastery of specialized research instruments. The researcher has demonstrated methodological sophistication through the application of diverse analytical toolkit. By integrating fundamental intellectual operations, specific analysis, synthesis, comparative assessment, and systematic generalization, the author establishes a robust conceptual foundation. The synergy of these varied investigative approaches ensures that resulting data is not only empirically substantiated, but also meets the high standards of reliability and scientific validity within the field of pedagogy. The dissertation exhibits a cohesive and logically articulated architecture comprising a formal introduction, 3 analytical chapters, comprehensive conclusions, and bibliographic record. I would like to say that the manuscript successfully fulfills its stated aims, presenting a series of scientific propositions, conclusions, and practical recommendations that are both thoroughly disclosed and academically substantiated. Along with mentioned above positive aspects, the reviewed scientific work contains certain points which might be disputable from our point of view. Namely, number 1, to enhance the scientific novelty and theoretical depth of section 1.3, it is recommended to explicitly integrate the digital dimension of child-centered management, specifically addressing the shift between synchronous and asynchronous interaction modes in 2026 blended learning environment in Ukraine. While the text effectively establishes the humanistic foundation, the actual relevance would be significantly strengthened by discussing how a teacher manager balances real-time emotional support and facilitation during live sessions with a strategic curation of autonomous AI-supported learning paths. This distinction is vital for grade 7-9s as it directly relates to the development of digital self-regulation, a key competency of modern child-centered paradigm. Number 2. While Section 2.3 provides a robust theoretical synthesis of group dynamics and models like Jigsaw, Leader, and Spinner, it lacks a differentiated management strategy tailored to the specific developmental shift within the 7th-9th grade corridor. The author treats basic secondary school age as monolithic block, failing to account for the transition from 7th graders who require more teacher-led structure to 9th graders who prioritize peer status and authentic autonomy. To enhance the scientific novelty, the author should explicitly analyze how the teacher's role must evolve from a structured facilitator to a consultant on demand as students mature. Number 3. A critical observation regarding the comparative analysis in Table 2.2, Section 2.4 is the numerical imbalance between domestic and foreign educational resources. While the author provides a detailed and valuable critique of the pedagogical limitations within domestic textbooks, noting a prevalence of reproductive tasks and a lack of group interaction, the validity of the international standard comparison would be statistically strengthened by including a more diverse range of foreign publications. Currently, the analysis leans heavily on Ukrainian authored texts, with only one clearly identified foreign designed resource. To ensure a more objective and comprehensive verification of the claim that international standards better facilitate interactive vocabulary and project-based learning, the sample size of foreign textbooks should be expanded to match the domestic cohort. Number 4, the analytical significance of Section 3.3 lies in its transition from theoretical abstraction to a structural and functional model, Figure 3.1, that serves as a practical algorithm for teacher facilitator. The author correctly identifies that child-centered management in the 7th-9th grades is not about granting unconditional freedom, but rather the systematic distribution of social roles, which channels the adolescent quest for peer status into productive academic interaction. This role-based approach transforms the classroom into a self-regulating ecosystem where a teacher's influence is hidden but strategic, moving from direct control to the orchestration of collaborative learning. To enhance the scientific novelty, the author could more explicitly link this procedural framework to the management of digital self-regulation in hybrid environments, ensuring the model's resilience against modern technology-related distractions while maintaining a low anxiety inclusive atmosphere. Number 5, in Table 3.11, Section 3.4, the high-level absolute number remained relatively small even after the experiment. It is recommended to add a sentence in the interpretation explaining that transitioning a student from low to medium or sufficient is often a more significant pedagogical victory in the 7th-9th grade context than simply increasing the number of high-level students, as it indicates the leveling up of the most vulnerable learners. We believe that mentioned above disputable issues and comments do not diminish the overall positive impression of the dissertation. So, the PhD thesis is a complete, independent, and highly quality scientific study that addresses a significant problem in modern pedagogical science. The author has successfully developed and experimentally verified a structural and functional model of classroom management and describes the developmental imperatives of adolescent learners with the communicative demands of English language acquisition. The research is characterized by a high degree of scientific novelty, particularly in its systemic application of the child-centered approach to secondary ELT management and its integration of digital technological solutions within a humanistic framework. The reliability of the findings is substantiated by statistical analysis and well-structured formative experiment across multiple experimental groups. While the review identifies areas for further refinement, specifically regarding the evolution of the teacher's role across the grade 7-9 corridor and the balancing of asynchronous digital management, these points do not diminish the fundamental value of the work. The dissertation meets the requirements set by the Ministry of Education and Science of Ukraine for the degree of Doctor of Philosophy in the specialty 011, Educational Pedagogical Sciences, and based on its relevance, theoretical depth, and practical significance, the author, Maxim Sergeyevich Rudkovsky, deserves to be awarded the scientific degree of Doctor of Philosophy. Thank you.
Thank you, Olga Anatolievna, for your review of the dissertation of our applicant. To answer the remarks, the floor is given to Maxim Sergeyevich.
First of all, I would like to thank Ms. Olga Anatolievna for the valuable comments and suggestion, and now we'll respond to each comment in turn. We thank for the insightful recommendation aimed at strengthening the scientific novelty and the theoretical depth of section 1.3. In response to this comment, the section 1.3 has been expanded to explicitly incorporate the digital dimension of child-centered classroom management within the contemporary blended learning environments in Ukraine. In particular, the revised text differentiates between synchronous and asynchronous interaction modes and clarifies the evolving role of the teacher management in grades 7 through 9. Additional emphasis has been placed on the teacher's function in providing real-time emotional support, guidance, and facilitation during synchronous interaction, as well as one of the strategic organization of the autonomous, digitally supported learning trajectories during asynchronous interaction, including elements of AI-assisted learning. This distinction highlights the importance of digital self-regulation as a key competence within the modern child-centered paradigm, and demonstrates the adaptability of the proposed management model across physical, virtual, and hybrid learning context. These additions emphasize the contemporary relevance of section 1.3 while preserving its humanistic and pedagogical foundations. We thank the reviewer for the important observation concerning age differentiation within the grade 7 through 9 grade corridor. In response to this comment, we would like to highlight the relevant subsection of chapter 2 has been revised to explicitly differentiate classroom management strategies according to the developmental characteristics of students in grades 7, 8, and 9, while the original version considered basic secondary school age as a unified group. The revised text now emphasizes the developmental transition from early to middle adolescence and its implications for child-centered classroom management. The updated version clarifies how the teacher role evolves from structured facilitator providing clear guidance, external motivation, and regulated group interaction in grade 7 to a consultant on demand supporting autonomy, peer interaction, and self-regulating decision-making in grades 9. This differentiation ensures that child-centered management does not become overly directive for these adolescents and remain psychologically appropriate and developmentally resonant across grades 7 through 9. These revisions enhance the scientific novelty of the section and strengthen the age sensitivity of the proposed management technology. We thank Ms. Olga Anatolievna for the important observation. The remark is fully accepted on point 3. Indeed, the initial version of the table 2.2 contained a limited number of internationally published textbooks, which may have caused the imbalance between the domestic and foreign samples. In order to strengthen the empirical validity and representativeness of the comparison, an additional content analysis was conducted, incorporating widely used international ESL course books published by Cambridge University Press, Oxford University Press, Pearson Education, and Express Publishing, fully aligned with the Common European Framework of Reference for Languages and the ACTFL Proficiently Guidelines. The updated comparison sample included Think, Cambridge University Press, Upstream, Express Publishing, English File Intermediate, Oxford University Press, Speak Out Intermediate, Pearson Education. The extended analysis revealed that international course books systematically implement competence-based and child-centered principles through integration of all 4 skills in communicative and project-based context, the predominance of cooperative and pair work models of interaction, and emphasis on open-ended creative task and reflection. Consistent use of formative assessment and digital learning support, like learning apps, My English Lab, and quizzes, which help. Correspondingly, Ukrainian textbooks, particularly the Karpuk series recommended by the Ministry of Education and Science of Ukraine, offer a clearly structured and linguistically balanced syllabus. However, they include fewer small group and project-oriented activities and therefore require further methodological enrichment consistent with CEFR child-centered pedagogy. In the revised text, Table 2.2 was expanded with 2 additional international examples, ensuring the proportional representation of domestic and foreign resources and enhancing the reliability of the comparative conclusions. The updated results corroborate the earlier finding. The international ESL textbooks developed within the Common European Framework embed interactive, communicative, and project methodologies from earlier stages of instruction, whereas Ukrainian editions preserve the clarity of structure and linguistic accuracy, but need deeper integration of cooperative and digital learning elements to fully implement the child-centered classroom management technology. Regarding point 4, comment 4, thank you for the detailed assessment of section 3 and for highlighting its practical value in moving from theoretical positions of a child-centered approach to an oriental framework for the teacher facilitator. We would like to clarify that in the dissertation, this transition is presented as a child-centered pedagogical technology of organizing learning activities in grades 7 through 9 English lessons. The technology operationalizes child-centered management as a regulated system of cooperation. Students receive rotating roles within heterogeneous group, which transforms adolescents' natural need for peer recognition into productive academical interaction, while the teacher's influence remain indirect but strategic through the design of roles, rules, and feedback. In response to the recommendation to strengthen the scientific novelty, we added a short clarification in section 3.3, explaining how the same technology ensures digital self-regulation in blended or hybrid learning. The revision explicitly describes role distribution and low anxiety routines that reduce technology-related distraction and support inclusive participation. These additions do not change the core structure of the dissertation. They specify how the existing technology functions in modern hybrid environments and thus make its applicability and novelty more explicit. This scientific novelty is enhanced by specifying how the developed child-centered classroom management technology supports students' digital self-regulation and attention management in blended hybrid learning environments while managing psychological safety. Regarding point 5, Thank you very much for the valuable remark regarding table 2.11. We agree that the absolute number of students who reached high level may remain comparatively small after the formative stage, which is typical for grades 7 through 9 due to the development specifics, heterogeneous stages, starting points, and the time needed for stable progress. In the revised interpretation, we added a clarifying sentence emphasizing that within a child-centered technology, a key pedagogical outcome is not only increasing the high-level group, but also the reduction of the low-level group and the movement of vulnerable learners to a medium and sufficient levels, which reflects meaningful leveling up and improved inclusion. Once again, Ms. Olga, thank you very much for your deep and vast analysis of our work.
Welcome, Maxim.
Thank you, Maxim Sergeyevich, for the answers. Olga Anatolievna, are you satisfied with the answers of Maxim Sergeyevich?
Yes, I am satisfied. Thank you very much.
Let's continue. And the floor is given to the reviewer, candidate of Pedagogical Sciences, Associate Professor of the Department of Germanic Philology and Germanic Languages Teaching Methodology of Bogdan Khmelnytsky Melitopol State Pedagogical University, Maslova Alina Viktorivna.
Dear members of the Specialized Academic Council, dear candidate, it's a pleasure to present the review for the dissertation of Maxim Rudkovsky, Classroom Management in the 7th, 9th grades English lessons according to the child-centered approach. The relevance of the dissertation topic is determined by current transformations in general secondary education, which emphasize learner autonomy, inclusivity, and the humanistic orientation of the educational process. In the context of implementing child-centered and competence-based approaches, effective classroom management in English lessons for grades 7 through 9 becomes a key factor, influencing both the quality of learning and students' social-emotional well-being. Adolescence is a particularly sensitive stage of development, characterized by increased need for respect, participation, and psychological safety, which requires teachers to move beyond traditional authoritarian management models. The research is especially timely in view of contemporary educational reforms in the new Ukrainian school and the growing diversity of learners' needs, as it addresses the necessity for scientifically grounded strategies of classroom management that support active engagement, positive behavior, and meaningful communication in foreign language learning. It should be noted that the author demonstrates a clear understanding of the logic of scientific research, as evidenced by the well-structured organization and appropriate formal presentation of the dissertation. The structure of the dissertation fully corresponds to the purpose and objectives of the study. The content of the dissertation and the manner of its presentation indicate that the research is complete and that the conceptual, scientific, and practical tasks set by the author have been successfully addressed. The precise formulation of the research problem and the correctly defined methodological framework enabled the author to systematize the material, highlighting the specifics of organizing classroom learning activities in English lessons in grades 7 through 9 within the context of a child-centered approach and the reform of general secondary education in accordance with the concept of the new Ukrainian school. This study substantiates the pedagogical value of small group interaction as a form of organizing classroom learning activities and provides a well-grounded model of child-centered classroom organization in English lessons for grades 7 through 9. the author makes a substantial personal contribution to the development of foreign language pedagogy and educational sciences by addressing classroom management in English lessons in grades 7 through 9 through the framework of a child-centered approach aligned with the principles of the new Ukrainian school. The author has independently conceptualized, theoretically substantiated, and experimentally verified an original model of classroom management that integrates small group interaction, socio-emotional learning, and digital technological solutions. The reliability of the research results is ensured by a well-grounded methodological framework. The use of complementary empirical methods, such as observation, questionnaires, testing, expert assessment, and appropriate statistical verification, as well as by the representativeness of the sample. 460 students from 6 secondary schools. The obtained data convincingly confirmed the effectiveness of the proposed approach in enhancing students' motivation, cognitive interest, quality of knowledge, and psychological well-being. The scientific novelty of the dissertation lies in the first-time development and experimental validation of a child-centered classroom management model specifically for English lessons in grades 7 through 9. The author has specified the theoretically refined key categories of modern foreign language education, including classroom management, child-centered approach, small group interaction, and social-emotional learning in the context of basic secondary education reform. The main results obtained personally by the author include the identification and substantiation of pedagogical conditions for effective classroom management, the development of a system of exercises and tasks adapted to widely used English textbooks, and the design of methodological recommendations for English teachers on the implementing small group learning, which significantly enriches current teaching practice in Ukraine. The content of the dissertation is characterized by internal coherence, logical consistency, and a clear correspondence between the stated aim, objectives, hypotheses, and the obtained results. The 3 chapters are well balanced and sequentially structured, from theoretical analysis through psychological and pedagogical substantiation to experimental verification. The style of the presentation meets the requirements of academic discourse, imprecise, terminologically consistent, and demonstrates the author's high level of scientific culture. The conclusions are well-grounded, logically derived from the theoretical analyses and empirical findings, and fully reflect the main results of the study. They clearly demonstrate the achievement of the research objectives and confirm the proposed hypotheses. Taken together, the conclusions and the appendices enhance the applied value of the dissertation and confirm its significance for both educational theory and the practice of teaching English in basic secondary education. Emphasizing the high quality of the dissertation research, we consider it necessary to point out certain aspects of the dissertation that, in our view, require further refinement, namely, number 1, the text of the dissertation uses concepts that require a more detailed interpretation, namely flipped classroom, page 100, and new forms of child-centered assessment, page 41. We believe that it would be efficient to clarify them. Number 2, the author proposes a set of exercises aimed at developing the cognitive activity of students in grades 7 through 9. page 23, such as the research provides a systematic justification for the forms and types of students' interaction in small groups and proposes a structured set of tasks and activities designed to enhance cognitive activity and motivation in accordance with the principles of a child-centered educational environment. Page 69, development of students' creativity through active cognitive engagement. Page 94, in our paper, the leading idea is the promotion of students' cognitive activity. However, in our opinion, it would be advisable to mention the use of the Bloom's taxonomy, which contributes to the implementation of the child-centered approach in developing learners' cognitive processes. Number 3. On page 38, the author presents a list of all Ukrainian scientific and practical conferences organized by Bogdan Khmelnytsky Melitopol State Pedagogical University. We suggest supplementing this list with the conferences from the last 5 years, 2021 through 2026, devoted to the issue of the humanization of the learning process. Number 4, throughout the text, the author predominantly uses British English, as evidenced by the following words: program, favorable, organization, emphasizes, etc. However, on pages 99 and 104, the American spelling variants of organizing and individualization are used. Number 5, we consider it appropriate to clearly describe the structure and number of stages of the experimental research in Chapter 3. Stage 1, name, description of what takes place on this stage. On page 159, it is stated the experiment consisted of 4 main stages. While in the conclusions to Chapter 3, page 186, we read that the pedagogical experiment was conducted over the course of 1 academic year and consisted of 3 interrelated stages. So additionally, page 188 notes that the reference is made to the comparison of baseline, formative, and control stages. Number 6. Some inconsistency in the use of terminology can also be observed. Pages 161 and 163, ascertaining and final stages of the experiment are mentioned, whereas on page 159, the term final stage is absent. The experiment consisted of 4 main stages: preparatory, ascertaining, formative, and control. Number 7. On page 149, the author clearly differentiates between the terms activity and task. However, on page 262, Appendix 1, the following is used: exercise, create a story together, and the word task. Each student adds a sentence or 2 to continue the story. In this case, we consider it appropriate to replace the word task with instruction. Number 8. Despite the generally high academic quality of the language used in the dissertation, the text contains some stylistic shortcomings, inconsistent collocations, and minor linguistic inaccuracies, such as the spelling of some terms, for example, activity, concept, etc. These remarks, however, do not affect the overall positive evaluation of the dissertation. The content of the dissertation and the associated publications fully correspond to the scope of Specialty 011, Educational and Pedagogical Sciences. The relevance of the research topic, the scientific novelty, and the practical significance of the theoretical and applied results provide sufficient grounds to affirm that the dissertation by Maxim Rudkovsky, Classroom Management in the 7 through 9 grades English lessons, according to the child-centered approach, represents a completed, independent scholarly work that meets current academic requirements of the procedure for awarding the degree of Doctor of Philosophy and cancelling the decision of a one-time specialized academic council of the institution of higher education, scientific institution, on awarding the degree of Doctor of Philosophy, approved by the resolution of the Cabinet of Ministers of Ukraine dated January 12, 2022, number 44, and merits the awarding of the degree of Doctor of Philosophy in specialty 011, educational and pedagogical sciences.
Thank you, Alina Viktorivna, for your report on the dissertation of our applicant. The floor is given to Maxim Sergeyevich to answer the remarks. You are welcome.
Thank you. First of all, I sincerely appreciate Ms. Alina Viktorivna's comments and the time devoted to reading my dissertation, and I will respond to the points raised in order. First, regarding the first comment, we fully agree with the suggestion regarding the need for a more detailed interpretation of these concepts. Regarding the flipped classroom, the text has been expanded to clarify that in the context of our study, this model serves as a structural basis for child-centered management. By moving the receptive stage of language learning, the theory, to the student's independent home environment, we maximize classroom time for productive artistic and communicative activities where the teacher acts as a facilitator rather than the lecturer. Regarding new forms of assessment, the child-centered assessment, page 41, we have clarified that these forms prioritize formative assessment over summative. Specifically, we integrated a self-reflection logs, peer feedback rubrics for teacher projects, and portfolio-based evaluation. This shift ensures that the assessment is perceived by the 7th through 9th grade students not as a verdict, but as a developmental tool that supports the autonomy and motivation. Moving on to the second comment. We express our gratitude for this insightful suggestion, and we agree that Bloom's taxonomy provides a robust theoretical framework for classifying cognitive engagement. In the revised version of the dissertation, we have explicitly linked the proposed set of exercises to the level of Bloom taxonomy. Specifically, we have demonstrated how the child-centered approach facilitates the transition from lower order thinking skills, such as understanding and applying vocabulary, to higher order thinking skills, such as analyzing, evaluating, and creating during project-based activities. This systematic approach ensures that the development of students' cognitive activity is not only motivated by interest, but is also cognitively structured to enhance academic proficiency. Let me now address the third point. We sincerely appreciate Ms. Alina's suggestion to include more recent academic events. Following this recommendation, the dissertation have been updated with the conferences held at Melitopol State Pedagogical University between 2021 and 2026. These events specifically address the humanization of learning, the child-centered approach, and the innovative pedagogical technologies. This edition confirms that the research results have been consistently presented and discussed within the professional community over the past 5 years, reflecting the modern state of pedagogical and science development. I would like to now move on to the fourth point. We are grateful to the reviewer for the meticulous linguistic analysis of the dissertation. We acknowledge the inconsistency in spelling standards on pages 99 and 104. In the revised version of the manuscript, the text has been thoroughly proofread to ensure strict adherence to British English and spelling conventions in the line with the dominant style of the thesis. Especially the American variants, organizing and individualization, have been corrected. The spelling have been corrected to organizing and individualization using S, respectively. In all other instances of lexical orthographic variation have been harmonized to maintain academic consistency throughout the work. Let me now address the fifth comment. regarding the structure and number of stages of the experimental research. We are sincerely grateful to the reviewer for the valid observation regarding the need for a clear structuring of the experimental stages. We completely agree with this comment, as in the revised text of the dissertation, we have harmonized the description of the stages to eliminate any discrepancies. It is now explicitly stated that the pedagogical experiment consisted of 3 main stages, the ascertaining, formative, and control stages, and we have also added a clarification that the preparatory stage had a purely auxiliary character and preceded the main experimental stages. Corresponding the unified corrections have been incorporated into general conclusions of the study. Turning to the 6th comment, regarding the consistency of the terminology, names, and experiment stages. We thank the reviewer for the meticulous reading of the manuscript for pointing out this terminological inconsistency. The comment is fully accepted. We have conducted a thorough review of the manuscript to ensure the absolute terminological uniformity. All discrepancies in the naming of the stages have been eliminated. The term final stage has been replaced with the correct and systematic term control stage. From now on, the terms ascertaining, formative, and control stages are used consistently throughout the entire stage. Moving on to the 7th comment, regarding the differentiation between the term activity and task. In Appendix I, we highly appreciate this precise methodological comment. We completely agree with the necessity to strictly adhere to the terminological differentiation defined in the main text of the dissertation. In accordance with your recommendation in Appendix I, the word task has been systematically replaced with the word instruction. In all practical descriptions of exercises for collaborative group work, this ensures complete logical consistency between the practical appendices and the theoretical framework of the research. And moving to our final 8th point regarding the stylistic shortcomings, typos, and punctuation errors. We are very grateful to Ms. Selina for the careful editing of our text. All identified stylistic shortcomings, typographical errors, and minor linguistic inaccuracies have been corrected in the final version of the manuscript, specifically the extra space, the typo word concept, etc. The use of quotation marks and punctuation around the term classroom management has been unified. Furthermore, we have conducted a final proofreading of the entire dissertation text to eliminate any potential technical flaws and guarantee a high academic quality of the English language of dissertation. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Maxima Sergeyevich, for the answers. Alina Viktorivna, are you satisfied with the answers of Maxim Rudkovsky?
Maxim Sergeyevich, I'm fully satisfied. Thanks a lot.
So we are moving on to the next stage of our meeting, general discussion. All the members of the council must speak on the evaluation of the scientific level of dissertation and scientific publications, taking into account the observance of academic integrity, establishing the level of acquisition of theoretical knowledge, relevant abilities, skills, and competencies by the applicant. It is suggested that speeches be made in this order: opponents first, then reviewers. So, who wants to be the first? What about you, Svetlana Alexandrovna? Maybe it's better to start from Natalia Evgenievna.
Okay, so I'm ready to start. As we see, Maxim Rudkovsky dissertation represents a comprehensive and scientifically grounded study on classroom management in English lessons for adolescents. The research is highly relevant as it perfectly aligns with the modern transformational process of the new Ukrainian school reform. I particularly appreciate the scientific novelty of the work, as the author is the first to identify and validate 3 essential pedagogical conditions for a child-centered approach. The practical contribution, including the development of a highly applicable methodological toolkit for teachers, is of significant value to contemporary pedagogical practice. Furthermore, the reliability of the findings is well supported by a robust experimental design involving 460 students and rigorous statistical validation. Maxim Rudkovsky has demonstrated a substantial personal contribution through his innovative pedagogical model and an extensive, high-quality publication record. The text is logically structured, professionally written, and reflects the author's maturity and expertise in pedagogical science. While certain discussion points were raised regarding terminology and scientific description, they do not neglect the overall high scientific level of the study. Ultimately, the dissertation provides a statistically validated roadmap for fostering autonomous and socially competent individuals in a modern educational environment. The work fully complies with all official regulatory requirements for awarding a Doctor of Philosophy degree in the specialty of educational and pedagogical science. Based on the academic excellence and practical significance of this research, I am fully convinced of its merits. Therefore, I give this work my highest recommendation and will vote in favor of awarding the degree of the Doctor of Philosophy. Thank you.
Thank you, Наталія Євгенівна. Світлана Олександрівна, you are welcome.
Thank you. Dear colleagues, I don't want to repeat what I have been said, and I completely support the previous opponent about highly significance of the novelty and the practical value of this dissertation. It's really so, and I would like only to pay attention that it's really have novelty and practical value of this dissertation, and and materials, so all practical materials we can use, and their school teachers, they can use these practical materials. Also, they can use these recommendations, applicant recommendations, and within the context of a new Ukrainian school. I was deeply impressed by Maxim Sergeyevich's behavior as a scientific researcher, because he was very, very confident. When he answered all questions with deep comprehension how to use scientific methods of the research. During the process of his defense, he was as a real researcher, as a real scientific researcher. I'm sure he will never stop conducting pedagogical experiments in his practice of teaching foreign language and secondary school. And I will vote for his dissertation, and I wish him good luck, and I deeply impressed from his defense. Thank you.
Thank you, Svetlana Alexandrina, for your point of view. Please, Olga Anatolievna.
Thank you, Irina Yakivna. As my final word here at Public Defense, I would like to say that this dissertation done by Maxim Rudkovsky represents a coherent, methodologically sound and valuable contribution to the field of educational and pedagogical sciences. And this research convincingly addresses a highly relevant problem of modern secondary education, the alignment of classroom management strategies with the developmental needs of the learners within a child-centered paradigm. And the study enriches the current approaches to English language teaching by integrating psychological, pedagogical, methodological dimensions into a unified framework. And I would like to say that dissertation compliance with established academic standard demonstrates originality, reliability, practical significance. Therefore, I do believe that it fully meets the requirements for doctoral level research in specialty 011, educational pedagogical sciences. And on these grounds, I believe that the work deserves a positive evaluation, and the author merits the award of the Doctor of Philosophy PhD degree. And I would like to say that it's a good continuation of family tradition, having a wife, the Doctor of Philosophy. Now the husband will also get this scientific degree. So I will surely support this. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Olga Anatolievna. And Alina Viktorovna, you are welcome.
Thanks a lot. So the presented dissertation by Maxim Rudkovsky addresses really a high relevant issue of classroom management in English lessons in grades 7 through 9 within the framework of the child-centered approach, which fully corresponds to the reforms and transformation of the new Ukrainian school today. The author demonstrates a clear understanding of the logic of scientific research with well-defined aims, objectives, and coherent methodological framework. Particular attention, of course, should be paid to the developed and experimentally verified model, namely child-centered model of classroom management for English lessons in grades 7 through 9. Which effectively integrates small group interaction, social-emotional learning, and digital technologies. The scientific novelty of the research is evident. I hope you agree with that. And the dissertation is characterized by internal coherence, logical consistency, and high level of academic writing. And the practical value of the study is enhanced by the development of the methodological toolkit and recommendations for English teachers. Personally, I would like to add that it was extremely interesting for me to get acquainted with your dissertation as far as it goes in line with my own methodological and scientific interests in terms of the recently developed, in collaboration with my colleagues, educational course, student-centered approaches for blended learning. So it was extremely interesting for me to dive into other aspects of child-centered approach and find out something new for me. So it was a great pleasure. Thanks a lot for that. The overall evaluation of the dissertation is definitely positive. In general, it is a completed and independent scholarly work that meets the current academic requirements. And the candidate definitely deserves to be awarded the degree of Doctor of Philosophy in Specialty 011, Educational and Pedagogical Sciences.
Thank you, Alina Viktorovna. As the head of the Specialized Council, I, Irina Yakivna Glaskova, Doctor of Pedagogical Sciences, Professor, also want to discuss the dissertation. First of all, I'd like to emphasize that the topic of the dissertation is relevant and important, especially nowadays. Today, the child-centered approach is one of the key directions in teaching, especially in foreign language learning. And it seems to me that the author clearly understands this problem and successfully explains it in his work. Among the strong points, I would like to highlight the clear structure of the research and logical presentation of the material. The author combines theoretical analysis and practical investigation, which makes the study more valuable. The experimental part is well organized and shows positive results. It seems to me that it proves that the proposed model helped to improve students' motivation, interest, and learning outcomes. Another important advantage is the use of such teaching methods, such as the group work, interactive activities, digital technologies, and these methods create better conditions for communication and cooperation on English classes. The work also pays attention to students' emotional well-being, which is important, especially nowadays. Also, I would like to stress the practical significance of the work. The recommendations formulated in the research paper can be used when drawing up educational programs, curricula, preparing course books for all foreign languages studied in comprehensive schools in Ukraine. But at the same time, it seems to me that there are some minor weaknesses in this work. It seems to me that in some parts, the theoretical section is a bit too detailed. And I support Professor Shekhovtsova that it would be better to use more tables in this work in order to present theoretical material. The second remark, the author mainly uses quantitative analysis, describing the results of conducted experiments. As for me, a qualitative analysis, which is also important, especially in the humanities, is less emphasized. But all the remarks are subjective and do not reduce the overall positive assessment of the research. The author has the right to obtain the PhD degree. Thank you for your attention. And now, I would like to ask you, dear colleagues, do you have any other comments, questions, additions, or suggestions that affect the evaluation of the dissertation and need to be included in the decision of the one-time specialized scientific council regarding the awarding of a Doctor of Philosophy degree to Maxim Sergeyevich Rutkovsky?
No, we don't.
Okay. If there are no people who wish to speak, then let's conclude the scientific discussion of the public discussion of Maxim Rutkovsky's dissertation, and I give the floor to our applicant. Dear Maxim Sergeyevich, I invite you to the closing remarks.
Thank you very much, dear Council. In conclusion, I would like to express my sincere gratitude to all the members of the Specialized Council for their time, for their attention, and thorough full evaluation of my dissertation. I'm especially grateful to the head of the Specialized Academic Council, Ms. Irina Yakivna, for leading this defense and for the professional and respectful atmosphere of the discussion. I would like to also extend my heartfelt thanks to the official opponents and reviewers for the careful reading of my work, for their very valuable comments and constructive criticism and insightful suggestions, which really helped me to improve and refine the research. My special thanks, of course, to my academic mentor, Ms. Tatiana Vasilievna, for continuous guidance, for professional support, for encouragement and belief in my work throughout the quite long entire process of my research. So thank you all for your attention and for your contribution to this important stage of my academic work and to this important stage of my life.
Thank you, Maxima Sergeyevичу. And now I would like to invite to the floor the scientific supervisor of the applicant of the scientific degree, Tatiana Vasilievna Konovalenko, candidate of pedagogical sciences, associate professor, Bogdan Khmelnytsky, Melitopol State Pedagogical University.
Thank you, dear Irina Yakivna. So, the esteemed head and members of the council, let me briefly speak of Maxim Rudkovsky's dissertation, the theme of which is relevant in the conditions of today's turbulence in Ukraine and all over the world, when educators have to go on their mission in a full of dangers and challenges situation. In Ukrainian methodology, pedagogical glossary, and legislative documents, we couldn't find the equivalent for one of the central concepts of the scientific paper, so classroom management. The inspiration for the theme appeared from the project New Generation School Teacher, when we tried to find interesting and relevant theme for Maxim's dissertation. The applicant focused his attention on resolving a number of contradictions existing in the system of teaching English as a foreign language in basic secondary education institutions of Ukraine and beyond. In accordance with existing professional experience and understanding of the need to modernize the education system, the dissertation reveals the theoretical foundations and practical ways for increasing motivations to learn English, improving students' learning outcomes, developing their subjectivity and social-emotional interaction skills, the study of which is relevant both in general and in times, especially in times of crisis such as pandemics or wars. We are extremely grateful to the esteemed head and the members of the Specialized Academic Council for the high appreciation of Maxim Rudkovsky's scientific efforts and valuable recommendations regarding his dissertation. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Tatiana Vasilievna, for your conclusion and for the evaluation given to the applicant's dissertation. So let's go on. And dear members of the one-time Specialized Academic Council, the applicant presented the material of the dissertation. A scientific discussion took place. The applicant answered all the questions that arose among the members of one-time Specialized Academic Council. And so let's move on to the discussing the draft decision on awarding the degree of Doctor of Philosophy in the field 01 Education Pedagogy in the specialty 011 Educational Pedagogical Sciences to Maxim Sergeyevich Rudkovsky. The draft decision has been sent to you. Allow me to read the main part of the project. The one-time Specialized Academic Council DF 10-01126 of Bogdan Khmelnytsky Melitopol State Pedagogical University of the Ministry of Education and Science of Ukraine, Zaporizhia, have made a decision to award the degree of Doctor of Philosophy to Maxim Sergeyevich Rudkovsky in the field 01 Education Pedagogy in the specialty 011 Educational and Pedagogical Sciences, classroom management in the 7th through 9th grades English lessons according to the child-centered approach on the 8th of April 2022. All comments of the opponents, reviewers, the head of the Specialized Scientific Council, as well as the voting results will be included in the decision. Are there any remarks? If there are no comments, questions, additions, or suggestions, then we proceeded to the voting procedure. The Council makes decision by open voting. All members of the one-time Specialized Scientific Council vote. Who is for taking the specified draft decision as a basis? Raise your hand and voice your answers out loud, please. Who is for? 5. Against? No one. Abstain? No one. So everybody is for. That is, we took this project as a basis. Dear colleagues, let's vote for awarding Maxim Sergeyevich Rudkovsky the scientific degree of Doctor of Philosophy in the field of knowledge 01 Education Pedagogy, speciality 011 Educational Pedagogical Sciences. Let's vote. Who is for awarding the degree of Doctor of Philosophy? Please raise your hands. Thanks a lot. Who is against? Does anybody abstain? Thanks a lot. Шановні колеги, далі продовжуємо наше засідання українською мовою. Члени разової спеціалізованої вченої ради у кількості 5 осіб, зокрема голова, опоненти та рецензенти за профілем розглянутої дисертації, проголосували. Результати голосування про присудження наукового ступеня доктора філософії Рудковському Максиму Сергійовичу. Брали участь 5 членів разової ради, проголосували за 5, проти немає, утрималися 0. Шановні колеги, дозвольте оголосити рішення разової спеціалізованої вченої ради. На підставі результатів відкритого онлайн-голосування присудити Рудковському Максиму Сергійовичу науковий ступінь доктора філософії з галузі знань 01 освіта педагогіка спеціальності 011 освітні педагогічні науки. Щиро вітаємо, Максиме Сергійовичу.
Дякую всім.
Вітаємо.
Вітаємо, Максиме Сергійович.
Вітаємо, Максима Сергійовича, вас та вашого
Тетяна
наукового
Василівна, вас
керівника. Тетяну Василівну, так, Тетяна
Ми з
Василівна.
вами це зробили, Тетяна Васильівна.
Усім дякую за роботу,
Дякую.
за позитивний результат. На цьому засідання нашої спеціалізованої разової вченої ради оголошую закритим. Ще раз найщиріше вітання, пане Максиме, пані Тетяно. Всім ще раз дякую за плідну і продуктивну співпрацю. А також дякуємо силам оборони, що вони нам забезпечили безперебійне електропостачання і вдалий захист.
Дякуємо.